Hey, what's up, Dan?
Marc, my friend, this is what the high-speed internet access podcast. Is that what we're talking about? This is an amazing story. Oh my goodness. I'm first of all super excited to do this. Second of all, I only got like 35 minutes and you try playing this podcast on double time because it's impossible, right?
There's a
Right?
lot.
Like 7 minutes ago, Marc didn't have good internet access. And I'm like, okay, you got to go back to another format. He's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, you can't wish high-speed internet access, right, in a podcast situation. He's like, there's one other thing I could do. And I don't know if he put a router in his back pocket or something, but boom. And that is perfect introduction to a Marc Hans podcast because the guy is amazing. Guy is incredible. Guy can solve high-speed internet access. Why isn't this guy an advisor to the White House? Amazing.
And this is what we call manifestation. I've manifested the internet to just work.
Okay, well, I don't know how you did it, but I want to follow you around because that's my number one pothole in life. I don't have fast internet, and super excited to be here and share some of my background and experience with your podcast listeners.
Of course, bro. Well, it's funny you say follow me around, but I will tell you that is exactly what I wanted to do the moment I learned of you, the moment I met you, and the moment I came into your universe. Is I was like, I want to be where Dan Tyre is. And for people that don't know who you are, one, shame on you. Two, you are in for a really, really special treat. You and I talk every week. We know each other. We work together at HubSpot. I'm blessed that I get to share time and attention and insight and value with you. But for folks that might not know who Dan Tyre is, where are you right now in the world, in the universe? What are you doing right now in your life?
Amazing. So my name is Dan Tyre. You can find me on LinkedIn or dantyre@gmail.com, or my website is www.dantyre.com. And first and foremost, I'm a friend of Marc Hans, which is amazing. Number two, I'm 65 years old. I live in a place called Paradise Valley, Arizona, which is exactly the way it sounds. I've been married for 34 years to the beautiful, smart, spiritual Amy Tyre, who you know, right? And I'm surprised she hasn't been on this podcast because that's really what your audience wants to hear, right? I am a 5-time entrepreneur, right? My first startup in my first startup was 1982. I know I sound like your grandfather, but
No.
The company was $2 million over the next 10 years, went to $1.4 billion before a billion was not just play money. And it was amazing and exciting. And I learned what entrepreneurship and startups were all about. Then I started my own company in Needham, Massachusetts in 1993, grew it to a $30 million company over the next 9 years, sold it to a Phoenix-based company. That's how I got to Arizona. I ran a national training company for several years. My fourth startup got bought out by Microsoft. Lucky me. And HubSpot is my fifth startup. I've spent 17 years at HubSpot.
Jeez,
this is like my last month at HubSpot. I'm employee number 6 at HubSpot, which is why everybody knows me. I used to be like just a regular entrepreneur, like a guy in Phoenix, right? But HubSpot changed my entire life, my entire trajectory. And so
I wouldn't say you're a regular. You were never a regular entrepreneur. You and I know entrepreneurship it's not what people think it is, right? It is strategic. It's data driven. It's challenging. But most entrepreneurs don't succeed financially and in scale in terms of helping people grow and giving them careers the way that you did. So you're not the typical entrepreneur, buddy. You're a shining star. All
right, so that's interesting you say that because there's a famous quote that says that everybody is an entrepreneur, and that's kind of true. What is an entrepreneur anywhere, Marc? What was your definition of an entrepreneur?
Somebody that has an idea or sees a problem that they want to solve, and they work to bring it to life.
Okay, that is every mom in the United States. That is every dad in the world, right? And not just in the United States. That is what people do. They see a problem, and they're like, okay, it's impossible to solve, right? From a business context, entrepreneurs do that with a profit motive or a nonprofit motive to scale and to provide employment and to sometimes make a little money or to solve a serious problem. Like people do that in their daily lives all of the time. And there are attributes and skills that we are going to talk, like we're happy to talk about today, that are critically important that everybody can learn, right? They're not hard. The earlier you learn them in your life, the better and happier and more productive and more successful you're going to be. And so, I had tons of experiences, right? I am incredibly grateful after 50 years of work. I've worked like full-time for 50 years, sometimes multiple jobs, right? Because first of all, I've always viewed hustle as a competitive advantage. Right. I get like really nervous if I'm not doing multiple things all of the time. I don't know if it's an attribute or a problem, right? But that's just the way I am. And the big energy that we talked about in the recording, it's just part of what I am, right? I just vibrated at a different level. I like screaming at people, and sometimes people like that, right? I like to motivate people. I like people feeling good about themselves. That's always been part of my brand, and will continue to be part of my brand as I go on to my next stage. And I have more fun than any human being, right? It's 99.5% of the time, it is great being me, right? Because number one, I've accomplished a fair amount. Number two, I am very grateful for all the things that I have. Number three, I have made so many friggin' mistakes. Like you can't even come close, right? Your mistake quotient is like 0.4% of the stupid, dopey things that I've done. And the approach and attitude of making mistakes is part of the Dan Tyre brand, right? I will tell you, Marc, you will never make a mistake in the future. Does that pass your sniff test?
I see what you're saying, but tell the people what you mean by
that. I'm like,
dude,
Marc.
By the way, anyone listen to this that like knows me, they're like, Marc's talking to Marc in the future right now.
I know.
Maybe minus the scale. They're like, oh my gosh, this guy's the guy. We're like the same person.
Why did Marc bring his father onto the podcast? I don't understand that, right? And we're not related, right? Except we're both human beings, so we all go back to some common DNA somewhere along the line, right? And we both share that big energy, right? Yours is a little bit more creative, right? Yours is a little bit, but equally energetic. Right. And the conversation about mistakes, which like we talk about all the time, is that it's all about what you do with the mistake. Right. In any life. Right. You get crushed multiple times. Right. The person you like in high school doesn't like you back. Your parents get divorced. There's issues with moving around. You're not tall enough. You're not fast enough. You're not all that kind of stuff. Like is the human condition. Right? Some more than others, some more privileged than others. If you come from a disadvantaged or a poor background here in the United States or anywhere in the world, right? It's obviously harder, right? But the idea of living a full life is you're going to do a lot of things. The more things you do, the more things you'll learn, right? Like most people, it's about 50-50. 50% of the times, the decisions you make, which, as we were mentioning, moms like make a gazillion decisions an hour, right? Some of them are going to be great decisions.
And dads. Come on, dads.
I know. My friend Erica Finley is starting a Dads in Sales.
I know Erica.
Program. Yeah, she's like, what do dads in sales have in common? I'm like, number one, they're exhausted. Number two, right? They want to talk about things to get right to the point. She's like, how can I be of value to dads in sales? I'm like, number one, you should get everybody on Zoom, but it's a 7-minute Zoom. Number two, make sure that they have a couch that they can like take a nap on. Therapy, and number three, right? Give them one nugget and say, all right, there's no action items from this kind of thing. All right, I digress. But in a mistake format, right, you're either going to make the right decision, and we want you to celebrate that right decision. I want people to stop and say, okay, that was a very good decision. It was well thought out. Or if you choose the wrong decision, right, if you make a mistake, if you fall into that pothole, that's why we call them potholes, to make fun of them, right? I'm like, Marc, you're never going to do that again. You're like, exactly right. You're never going to start a podcast when you don't have one of those little things.
Did I tell you about this guy, Jim Bacher? He's an artist in Chicago, and he fills in potholes with mosaic art, handmade mosaic art. This guy's featured all over the world, but there's a term in the Japanese culture, which essentially it's about that we celebrate the cracks. When things break, they fill them with gold because we celebrate the cracks because that's where the light comes in. Amazing. And this is similar to what you're saying about mistakes, right? It's like,
no, exactly right.
Yeah.
In fact, I should connect with that guy, and we should bring that everywhere in the world because it's a visual metaphor for like in today's world, the modern world, right, is much different. It's much harder. Somebody asked me the other day, is it harder being a parent? It was my friend Eric Ullman. He's like, do you think it's harder being a parent? I'm like, it's so much harder, right? And he's like, why do you think it's harder? I'm like, because in my era, when I was a parent, if I made a mistake or my kids made a mistake, no one knew, right? Today, one young adult says one thing or interacts with one other young adult, which happens all the time, and doesn't make the right decision or acts impulsively or emotionally like that, then like it's a big thing, right? It gets spread, it's viral, right?
It's public. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because we used to say that, a company, for an example, a company, like, oh, we're eco-friendly, go planet Earth, but they're dumping chemicals out the back door into the river. But nowadays we say the world's transparent, meaning all it takes is one person with a smartphone to take a picture of that waste running in the river, and that company is dead in the water. And so there is this heightened sense of performance. I think what I hear you saying about making mistakes, you'll never make a mistake again, is about the idea that like a negative, potentially negative outcome is really a positive outcome because you can learn from it. And you and I know, because we talk every week, Charlie, my oldest, is in the college application process. Next week, he will find out if he got into his dream school. It's a very competitive school. And he and I spoke last night about how to prepare for that. Because I always say, prepare for the worst, expect the best. And I said, next week, it's going to be a yes or a no. And if it's a yes, we're going to celebrate. And if it's a no, we know what the answer is. And now we're ready to move on. So either way, it's about, you can't control certain things, but you can always control your reaction in the way that you move on from them. And I think that's kind of the nugget at the core of what you're talking about never having a mistake.
Exactly. It's not that you're not going to do stuff that's dopey or wrong or whatever. It's that either you made the right decision, and the important drill down on that is you need to celebrate it, or you make the wrong decision, and the important drill down on that is like you learn the lesson, right? Some people have learning styles that they don't really learn until they make the same mistake multiple times, right? You're talking to somebody whose learning style is I got to make the same mistake twice, usually not 3 times, right? But if I'll make it, and then I'll make it again, and I'll be like, son of a gun, right? I can't believe I made that mistake. I just made it yesterday. Or in certain cases, I just made it 7 minutes ago, right? But after 2 times, I'm like, okay, mental check. I'm not going to make it again. And in most categories of my life, that works. So I've made a ton of mistakes because I've been alive a little longer than you. I've made some great decisions, right? Joining HubSpot, working for HubSpot for 17 years, great decision. Staying married with my beautiful wife, great decision. Having 2 socially responsible kids, great decision, right? Dedicating my life to doing the most good for the universe, great decision, right? And so life boils down to that kind of stuff, right? Your perspective, your understanding, your ability to connect, your ability to provide a value and give. And then there's all kinds of quirky stuff because I've done so much things, right, over the years that have put in additional texture that helps understand and just makes life interesting, fun, and makes me happy.
Real quick, you said, and it's on your website, right? Like, do the most good for the universe. We live in a time where everybody online I'm save the world. I can teach you how to do this. This is not a tagline for you. You literally do as much good. And I can say, for context, for folks that are listening or watching, right? You mentor anybody, anytime, anywhere. You have office hours every week in Phoenix where people can come in and book time with you and learn from you. You donate. You have your mentoring program. You fund startups. You participate in the startup ecosystem in Phoenix and across the world. You give. You're really just really giving with a lot of both your time, your energy, capital, what have you. So you really are trying to do it. It's important because I think people nowadays, when they hear someone be like, I want to change the world. It's like, okay, are you changing the world really? Like, what is the measurable impact?
Key, right? So number one, thank you for those compliments. Number 2, I decided to take that seriously. My son first said, Dad, all I want to do is do the best that I can for the universe, which I'm like, okay, I'm stealing that line. And he's like, what?
Thanks, kid.
I'm like, I'm taking that. That's going on the banner of my website. That's brilliant. And it was out of generosity and his viewpoint. He was involved in philanthropic efforts when he was 13, right? And amazing. And I'm like, okay, I see where that's a better use of my life than just going out and make a whole lot of dough and like be my.
All right, I got to pause there. because this is a big thing. because we have to get into your story too, right? Because where you are right now is really different from where you started and where you came from, and your trajectory of your life. Like Steve Jobs said, who you worked with. Steve Jobs said you can't connect the dots moving forward. You can only look back in life and then connect the dots, right? And so there's an interesting thing here that and I've heard you say when we talked that like you kind of missed a lot of time as a parent when the kids were younger.
Yes, that's true. My wife, Amy Tyre, is smart, thoughtful, and she was a big time salesperson for IBM. Right when my son was born, he was a special needs kid, so she quit her job and dedicated her life to Eli's productive growth. Right. And did an amazing job. Like, talk about making decisions many times without all the information. She had to figure things out. She had to understand what a double E kid was like. She had to understand it. And there's no manual for it. And all the moms out there understand what it is. Everybody's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. When Sally came along, she was the quote easy child. And like, she was just another human being. And Sally's amazing, third year at law school, doing great stuff. But Amy's response to Eli taught me, right, that like the selfish focus on another human being is really one of the greatest gifts that you can give. And I learned a ton. And while that time, like when Eli was 7 to maybe he was, 16, I was on the road 100% of the time. I commuted because I was working for HubSpot, and I lived in Arizona, and the company was in Cambridge. So every other week I was in Cambridge, and that was a huge impact on my family, on the ability for me to be there, on Amy, because she had to do everything. And I learned a ton about understanding and giving of myself, and how that can work in a context of scale through business, as also my individual connections.
So two quick follow questions. One, while you were traveling the world, building HubSpot, employee number 6, building businesses and selling and then getting an HubSpot, all that, were you aware of like this precondition where, like, if you look at like pre-Eli, post-Eli, were you aware of perhaps the way you were living and the impact it may have had on the family?
Not the way I know now, right? So what you said, looking back on it, I'm like, I do remember Amy and I went through a rough patch in 2004. I was on the road 100% of the time for another company, and we had very difficult challenges. I wasn't listening. I wasn't being productive as a part of the relationship, but I wasn't being a good dad, right? So talk about a wake-up call. My wife moved out of our house and moved in with another guy, right? Which is a pretty big step, right? And I'm like, what? Oh my goodness. And I can talk about it on a podcast because I talk about it from the stage, because people are like, yeah, you're Dan Tyre. Everything has been smooth. And like, this was one of the seminal mistakes in my life. I'm like, what just happened? Oh my goodness. Totally blindsided because I was not paying attention. And because I was committed to my relationships, because I wanted to understand and took responsibility and ownership of my role in that, right? And because I wanted to stay married to the greatest person ever, we went into counseling. And it was also very interesting because the first four counselors said, you got to leave. She's already made her decision. And I'm like, no. One of my attributes is a little stubborn. And I'm like, no, she hasn't really made her decision. And until she makes that decision, I'm going to stand by. She's like, this lady's like, that's an incredible gift. I'm like, maybe, but that's what I'm going to do. And the fifth therapist said, all right, well, then let's see how it runs the course. And after a while, we started getting together. We started to communicate. We went through 10 years of therapy to understand how to better communicate to each other. And now we've been married for 34 years, right? And hopefully we'll continue to get married, to stay married, because now we know how to communicate. And now you can look back on it, and telling that story is super important, because lots of people are in different stages of their personal relationship. And it's hard. It is so hard. And right, job number 1 is taking care of yourself. Job number 2 is leaning into those relationships. And now that I have that perspective of making that huge and gut-wrenching and totally difficult mistake, I want other people to have just a little bit of understanding and knowledge that they can apply to themselves.
Number 1, I didn't know that. And thank you for sharing. And I know you say you share it openly, but, I don't know if that's always easy to share. I know that you do share it, but I know
Well, it's
that
easy
maybe
to share now because number one, Amy said it's okay. And number two, it's a huge success,
yeah.
right? Believe me, there's
Well,
lots
this
of
is what you
people.
said about mistakes. This is what you said. It's like a mistake is a growth opportunity. I have a question
Yeah, but
about
let
this
me just
though.
make a point,
Yeah.
right? When it happened, I'll never forget the night it happened. My wife took me to a restaurant. She said, "We're over." Right. And she explained to me, and I'm like, how did I not see this coming? Oh my goodness. I could not sleep. I could not eat. I ended up moving out of our house. It was friggin' horrible. Right. And it impacted our kids and impacted her. But it was the right thing for her to do because she had to take
Yeah.
her power back. And it's like, if you want more details, you can always talk to Amy Tyre, right?
Yeah.
Because she shares it as well. And we want to make sure that to the best of our ability, people understand that in any relationship, first of all, it's challenging. Number two, you really got to bring your whole self to it. And number three, it's like a jungle, right? You got to navigate through that jungle, and there's some tools that can help, and that if you keep working on it, there's a great success story at the end.
Again, thank you for sharing. There's a lot there, but I have
Yeah,
a question, which
go.
is because I know you and I know that there's certain things that drive you now in 2023, and maybe those are the same or different things that drove you back in, the early 90s, let's say. While you were on the road, while you were building, I know that one thing that's important to you is people. You deliver, you are objective in the way that you have relationships with people and have accountability to help them grow. I'm curious, and this is like totally did not think this is where this conversation was going to go, but while you were kind of blinders on the road, working, was the driver there about delivering for people, building relationships with people, closing sales with people, helping people grow?
No.
Okay. What was it?
First of all, it started in the 80s. I graduated college in 1980. I was a bass player in a heavy metal rock and roll band. I had hair down to my shoulders. It was awesome, except everybody has long hair and knows it's hard to take care of. So I went a lot shorter. I sold books door to door, which was an incredible education to pay my way through college. And then I did a variety of different things as a bass player in upstate New York and Boston. Right. My mission for working when I first started was number one, to have fun. Right. And no one has had more fun than me. No one has had more. I have had more fun than any other human being has a right to. I always tell people, if I get hit by a bus today, it was like a great ride. Oh
Wait,
my
this
goodness.
is how we know
Amazing.
we're the same. I say
Okay.
that all the time. I say
Okay.
there's a lot of buses in the world.
Okay.
So if I step out on Peterson Avenue, get hit by a bus,
Yeah.
I want to leave people with a
Yeah.
value. And you have
So
had fun. You had
I
breakfast
know
with Bob Marley and his wife. You met with the Grateful, you had dinner with the
all of that
Grateful
stuff.
Dead,
Yeah. Yeah.
worked with
Yeah.
Steve
I'm
Jobs.
employee number
Yes.
6 in HubSpot, right? I forgot to tell you how lucky I am, right? I'm
Yes.
the luckiest guy in the universe, right? Because of my relationship, all that kind of stuff. But when I started working, number one
Okay.
is I wanted to learn. I wanted to have fun. Number two, I wanted to learn stuff, right? And I just think it was, it's Charlie Munger, the
Yeah.
co-founder of Warren Buffett, who said, you don't need a college degree. What you really need is a mindset of always learning. And I am blessed with natural curiosity. I want to know about everything. I want to know why your internet isn't providing the high speed that you need to record this podcast. I want to understand where you bought that hoodie. I want to understand your creative process. And it's a little bit of a challenge because I want to know everything and learn everything and try everything. So number one was to have fun. Number two was learn stuff. Number three was to make money, right? And I'm the cheapest guy in North America. Right, I have the first $5 I ever made caddying, right, in 1976 when I was 15 years old, and I was usually pretty good at making money because I had an insatiable desire to make money. I came from like upper middle class, but I was independent relatively quickly. And I knew that I always wanted to be able to provide for my family. So I became a good investor. I became a high performer salesperson, which is usually pretty lucrative. And I made a lot of dough, right? And then in 2014, when HubSpot went public, right, I greatly increased my assets. And following Dharmesh Shah, the illustrious co-founder of HubSpot, who's like the Buddha of HubSpot, he had made investments in angel companies. I'm like, I want to do that. And you asked in the one thing that I think differently about in the briefing notes, Venture capital is something that I think differently about, because for me, it's not necessarily the economic return on investment. It's empowering women and people of color who are greatly underserved in venture capital to share with them my background and experience. So the 30 portfolio companies that are in Tyre Angel, which is my investment vehicle, majority are women, people of color, because I want to help the equality to do more good for the universe. And it's amazing that some of them have been very lucrative, but the great psychic income that I get from helping that group of folks build and be the next generation of leaders is incredible. So I went from
good. This is like good for the world, right?
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
current Dan Tyre is like, do the most good for the universe by investing in companies from underserved communities, etc. But pre-Dan Tyre was have fun, travel, make a lot of
have fun, learn stuff,
make a lot of money, and learn stuff.
On the travel thing, I like to hire people who have traveled. Travel is a great way to learn things, right? If you've only spent a little bit of time in a small geographic area, you lack the texture and experience of going to some place that doesn't speak the language, where there are different money, there's different times, there's different cultures, right? Having visited, 65 or 70 countries in my lifetime, right? Human beings are human beings, but there's such a differentiation in the way people look at things and solve problems. And there's so much wisdom that you lack unless you go out and spend time in connecting with them, that the pivot was really HubSpot in probably 2014, when I went from having fun, learning, and making money to in 2014, I had more money than I could spend, right? And I don't say that egotistically. I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about that, right? As the cheapest guy in North America, I'm not going to buy a lot of stuff. I don't need a new pair of jeans. I got 53 HubSpot t-shirts, right? People wouldn't recognize me unless I had HubSpot t-shirts. Now what I want to do is use my wealth as a way of providing leadership to other folks, which led to those investments, which led to more fun, which led to more connections. And right, that connection point is very, very important. HubSpot was in early on that, doing more good for the universe. When I wrote the book Inbound Organization in 2018 with Todd Hockenberry, by the way, Todd was the best co-author in the history of books, right? Amazing, right? And insightful and thoughtful. And in 2 years that we spent writing the book, we never had an argument. Right? Amazing. We talk about the inbound philosophy, right, for scaling businesses, which is started to be human. And HubSpot has always been human. It's always been mission driven, right? It's always been help people first, right? And doing more good for the universe is just a shortened version of helping people first. And when you attach that to the big energy in small doses, right, it appears that people find value in that, right? I always want people coming away from any type of interaction feeling better about what they're solving. That's why I want to eliminate mistakes. There are no mistakes. They're just potholes. You're going to make them, right? Your attitude and perception is more important. Let's get that out of the way. If you could learn that as a young adult, oh my goodness, right? That is a hugely impactful, and that's my gift to the universe, right? It's not unique.
We now know about things like mindfulness and mental health, right? Like when I was a kid, it was like bang your head against the wall. Yo, you're upset. My grandma would say, bang your head against the wall. So we know these things now. We know how good they are. And I think the same thing is true about the way that we raise kids now, around like mistakes are a good thing. They're an opportunity. Fail fast and learn deeply.
By the way, on mistakes, you haven't given me any times that we're close to the end. So
I've been trying.
I was really? I'm watching that. Yeah, really? Oh, I thought that was part of your shtick there, your little dance.
You got about, we can go about another 8 minutes if we need to. You're good, because we got to the top of the hour. Dan, again, like the conversation with you and I, we talk every week, and I know you are moving on from HubSpot, but I know we're still going to talk every week, because as my mom says, the difference between a pit bull and a Hans, a member of the Hans family, is eventually a pit bull will let go. We never let go. I will never let go of this relationship. Yeah, you can take that one. That's a good one.
Just a point on that, where I riff on that. You were talking about everybody wants to change the world, right? And there's a difference between people who think it and people actually do it, right? And I forget where I read it this year. Maybe it was Scott Clary, who's amazing on his Substack email list. He's like, the difference is lots of people talk about it, but can you move it over to actions, right? And what you just described is all of the ways that I've thought about it and then failed forward fast, right? Part of the Dan Tyre kind of thing is I'm not the smartest guy in the room ever, right? Even with kindergartners, like it's like just one of those things, but no one moves quicker than I do, sometimes to my own detriment. But my like decision style and the way that I'm able, I think my wife calls it the Kobe scale, is that I want to do it, right? I want to learn. I want to do a little bit of research, but small on research, and then just go out and test that, right? And that served me very, very well. So putting things into action, right, with a small amount of research has really helped, so that you can get the appropriate feedback, so that you can understand how to course correct, and so you can go out and actually accomplish something rather than just be one of those people who talks about it.
So there's another thing there, which you and I just recently talked about. This was with the recent conflict in the Middle East. We talked about how we'll have an emotional response, overwhelm, sadness, anger. We have emotional response, and some people just stay there. But then sometimes people get moved to action, and that's where it's, again, I think you and I talked about, if you had your last breath, your last dollar to do something about this, what would you do?
Like, doing the most good for the universe is amazing, right? Because it's a philosophy, a personal philosophy that pays incredible dividends. And as you know, on October 7th, as I've led a Jewish lifestyle because my wife is Jewish. I was raised Irish Catholic, which is amazing because I got to see both cultures, right? On October 7th, I was really bunched up. I didn't see a way out. I was in the crunch pit very, very seriously. But I took my own advice, which is hard. Taking your own advice is hard. It's easy to give out advice to people.
Tell me about it, man. Right? It's the hardest.
I know. Yes. But I took my own advice and I dug deep. I did my research. I talked with the people I know. And what I realized is that I'm not the first person to be faced with absolutely no bright future, right? There are tons of cultures, people, and experiences where there was no way out, and still they found a way to move forward. And we always suggest that you lean into your connections, you lean into your community, and you figure out what to do. Right. And it's not just talking about it. Right. The beautiful Amy Tyre was talking about, OK, what are we really solving for? It's not Israelis versus Palestinians. What we're really solving for is world peace. And as soon as we understand and change that dynamic, right, then it changes the discussion just a little bit. And as luck would have it, because I'm the luckiest guy in the world, I was a featured speaker at a book club. Right. There's a local group of men here in Arizona who's like, we want you to name a book. We want you to make us read it. And then we want you to come talk about that book. And I picked a book called Bounce. Have you ever heard of the book Bounce?
No.
Matthew Said. And he's a world-class ping pong player, table tennis. Yeah. And he talks about high performance. Right. And it was a great book that was instrumental in my learning business concepts. And I had them read it. And it was October 9th or October 10th when the book club came together. And there was some real challenges of people who are still in that crunch pit. They were still thinking seriously, as rightfully so, about their safety, about the impact on their families, about the impact on the Jewish community in Phoenix, in Arizona, and in the world. And I was prepared. And I'm like, okay, I hear what you're saying. This is where I was like on Saturday. And then I did the work. Right. And we got to find a way to speak our truth, to understand where we are in this, and engage in a way in which everybody understands what we're really solving for. And it's going to be unpopular and it's going to be hard. Everything is always hard, right? If it's easy, it'd already be done by now. It'd already be an app on your first or second screen of your phone.
They say nothing ever came from a life that was a simple one.
That's exactly right. It's always, as life entrepreneurship, it's always 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Even at 65 years old, I still make stupid mistakes. I made a stupid mistake with my beautiful daughter in New York City that I can't believe I made. Right? I say my learning style is falling into this 2 and I'm good. This is the 11th time, maybe 12th time that I've fallen into this mistake, and it was horrible. Hopefully I've learned my lesson, right? But moving to action, to actually do something, right? Critically important in today's world. And everybody can do something. You can smile at somebody when you're getting in your Uber. If you're a person of means, you could tip your Uber driver $20. I call it the Dan Tyre minimum wage, right? I love doing that. I welcome the time when I can give them $50. right? Because it's like that's the reason to have a little dough is that you can move it around. You can make somebody happy. When I was 19 years old, if somebody gave me $50, I would have a heart attack. Are you kidding me?
Seriously.
Now it's not that big a deal, right?
Yeah.
And it can make a huge impact on people, on the world, and your community. Well, the reason I'm doing this podcast is if I can ever be of service, you can track me down. I'm not that hard to find, right? And to the best of my ability, right? I'll listen, I'll understand, and I'll see if either I can help you, if I can't help you, somebody in my community can.
And I can attest to that. This is not like podcast BS. This is, Dan, I think, and again, we're going to wrap here. We got a minute or so left. Anyone that has had the privilege to meet you, know you, read your books, attend a talk, be in business with you, anything, they can all attest to one thing, and that you are authentically doing the most good for the universe that you can. When I learned of you, and I started the podcast by saying this, when I first learned of you and met you, I said, I want to follow him and be where he is. That's just where I want to be. I don't know how I did it. I schmoozed my way in, and we talk weekly now. Oh, it's through the mentor program. We're in a mentor program.
Yeah, we got to give a shout out to Julia and apparently Kara Sussville and Rachel Sheldon. Yes.
Rachel Sheldon for starting. Yes. And,
and right.
They did that. We got connected.
Throw in Courtney's, both Marc and I work for HubSpot Academy, which is a division of HubSpot. And Kip Bodner is the incredible CMO of HubSpot. And John Dick is the incredible Senior Vice President or EVP. And Lori Aquilante is she's got to be a VP by now. And Courtney is a director of Academy. She set up this program where people can really connect individually. And I've had 5 or 6 network buddies, and virtually all of them continue because that like deep connection is super important to Academy, to HubSpot, and to the world.
I can say that my life is different. I have a pre-Dan Tyre and a post-Dan Tyre, and my life is better for having met you. So thank you for allowing me to be a little nugget, a little part of your life. I look forward to you moving on from HubSpot and making a bigger dent and doing even more good for the universe in our weekly talks. But I want to thank you for taking the time, man. Awesome. I will say this without any hesitation. Dan Tyre, I love you.
Oh,
You've taught me so much. I get goosebumps and I don't want to cry. You've taught me so much in such a short amount of time. You've had such a huge impact on my life. You are the model. You are the model and the standard by which we should hold ourselves to learn from our mistakes, from helping others, from being of service, and from owning the hard shit that comes with life. I love you so much, man. I just want to say thank you. I love you. Peace to you in Arizona. And thanks for doing the podcast.
You got it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, man. You are,
that was awesome.
I mean every word of that, buddy. I do. I love you dearly. I don't know if it's clear how much I look up to you. You have an ability, it's been a rough few weeks over here in the Hans house. The last few months have been pretty rough. You are the highlight of my week. I always look forward to talking to you, whether it's strategic, technical, objective, goal setting, or just listening. I really appreciate you, man.
When will the podcast drop?
I'm going to drop this one next week, probably next Tuesday.
Okay, I'm going to send an email and copy Kira, and she'll put it on the update list, and we'll update it on social media, so we'll see if we can drive you some listeners.
Appreciate it so much, man.
Keep it rocking, my friend.